When this program was originally released on Hiroshima Day, the American presidential elections had not yet officially confirmed the candidates or their policies. So far, neither of the now confirmed candidates has raised the issue of nuclear disarmament in the campaigns. But from previous statements and party platforms, the differences are obviously sharp. President Obama has not changed from his original positions in support of global nuclear disarmament and the removal of all nuclear weapons from hair-trigger alert. President Obama has pressed for ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, and the Democratic Party platform declares support for all international disarmament treaties. Republican candidate Mitt Romney has not spoken of nuclear disarmament in the campaign, but he has previously described President Reagan's call for a world without nuclear weapons as unrealistic. Romney opposed the START treaty with Russia to minimize nuclear weapons and describes Russia as America's major enemy. Neither Romney nor the Republican platform mentions either nuclear disarmament, de-alerting, or the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. However, Romney's chief advisor on the issue is John Bolton, one of more than a dozen advisors who have formerly supported George W. Bush's policies. John Bolton was Bush's controversial United Nations ambassador, appointed without congressional approval. He deliberately blocked a consensus at the 2005 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference at the UN and rejected the World Court call for nuclear disarmament, saying, "There is no such thing as world law." Bolton is expected to be the Secretary of State in a Romney administration. The Democrats want to cut military spending by $500 billion. Romney wants to increase military spending by $2 trillion. Against these election updates, the following original 2012 Hiroshima Day special gains renewed urgency. It has now been more than 67 years since the American attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are the memories of children who survived. And for nearly 40 years at the United Nations, the vast majority of the world's peoples have called for the elimination of nuclear weapons. Yet even now, the United States and Russia alone still keep tens of thousands of weapons, thousands on hair-trigger alert. Other nations now have bombs, and more are seeking to acquire them. But with the advent of the Obama administration in the United States, it had seemed that at last the world might be moving back from the brink.
I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Obama became the first United States president to chair the United Nations Security Council, calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons.
This very institution was founded at the dawn of the atomic age, in part because man's capacity to kill had to be contained.
Among those reporting from the United Nations was the host of a new world student news service, Queen Noor of Jordan.
I have just left the United Nations Security Council special session on nuclear proliferation and disarmament. It was chaired by President Obama, the first ever Security Council session on that subject. And I have great news. The resolution passed unanimously.
From the very beginning of the worldwide effort to ban the bomb, one of the leading figures has been the former chairman of the United Nations Disarmament Committee and a Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Senator Douglas Roche of Canada. He is the author of Beyond Hiroshima and more than 20 other books on nuclear disarmament, including, most recently, How We Stopped Loving the Bomb.
Well, I would want to give a lot of credit to President Obama for the comprehensive nature of his speech in the Prague when he pointed the way to a nuclear weapons-free world. And he followed that up right away by convening, for the first time ever, a meeting of the UN Security Council at the summit level devoted exclusively to the subject of nonproliferation and disarmament. So that was an important move that President Obama made. And he showed there that he wants to get the international machinery moving. Now, with himself, he's surrounded by people in his own apparatus, if you will, who perhaps don't share fully the view of their own president. And thus, there is a dragging of its heels going on now in the United States that we'll have to wait and see whether a re-elected Obama can change that in 2013. I take some considerable comfort in the fact that Ban Ki-moon has already been re-elected to his second term, and he was the first Secretary General to go to Hiroshima, and to bring the full weight of the United Nations authority to the subject when he put out his 5-point proposal for nuclear disarmament. So leaders can only go as far as the traffic, will sustain them, and we have to wait and see what Obama will be able to do.
What ideally would you hope he would do if he has a second term?
Well, I want to see a start made on comprehensive negotiations for a nuclear weapons convention. We need a global legal ban on all nuclear weapons.
Obama's promise of disarmament faces the great challenge of statecraft to change course without swerving. He has changed course. He has not swerved. They have been the first small steps on what will be a long journey. Thousands of nuclear weapons are still on hair-trigger alert. Billions of dollars are still invested in making more bombs. The United States is increasing funding in Los Alamos for further nuclear bomb production. And around the planet, lethal nuclear wastes accumulate. We have been bad ancestors. We have created unverified, uncounted thousands of nuclear bombs and left them on hair-trigger alert. We have burdened all foreseeable future generations with a deadly legacy of nuclear wastes with no place to put them. This interview from the TV studios of the United Nations headquarters in New York explores recent developments in the continuing efforts of non-governmental organizations to press nuclear weapons states into compliance with their agreements to abolish nuclear weapons. Our guest is Alice Slater, New York director of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation and founder of the global disarmament organization Abolition 2000. If Obama were to get a second term, do you anticipate that there may be changes?
I think it has to come from the grassroots. It's not going to come from Obama. He made the statement, that we should have a nuclear weapons-free world, and it might not happen in my lifetime. That was part of his statement. Hillary Clinton misquoted him and said, as the president said, it might not happen in several lifetimes. So that's where the establishment is thinking. Like it's a good idea, and we've seen that even from the old rusty Cold Warriors like Kissinger and Nunn, and there were 4 of them, Schultz, that wrote this op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal saying it's time to get rid of nuclear weapons, but they keep backing off from it. And I mean, Obama paid a terribly heavy price for this little START treaty with Russia. I mean, we only cut our arsenals from 10,000, to 2,000 or 2,500. And he had to promise over $84 billion to the weapons labs for new nuclear weapons technology and $100 billion for new delivery systems, airplanes, submarines, and missiles, to get this little START treaty through that it was just cutting some of the arsenal. It didn't really move us that far down the road. So he had to make that deal. I don't know what his power will be unless we have a Democratic Congress. And then it's still going to have to come from the grassroots because I don't know how committed he is right now.
It has been reported that Obama has received a report on possible options for the future with the nuclear arsenal. And one of the proposals is for a cut in the number of nuclear weapons by 80%, presumably with a matching response from Russia. But the fact that such a proposal, fairly dramatic cut of that kind, is even being discussed, does that give you any sort of hope?
Oh, definitely. I think it's wonderful that they're talking about that because Nothing is going to happen with nuclear disarmament until the U.S. and Russia go down to at least, at most 1,000 warheads each, because there are 19,000 nuclear bombs on the planet since the START Treaty, or 20,000 of them, and 19,000 are in the U.S. and Russia. So all the other nuclear countries have altogether 1,000, China, England, France, India, Pakistan, North Korea. If the U.S. and Russia don't go down to 1,000 each, the other countries aren't going to deal with them. So once they do that, we can invite everybody to the table and start talking. And this has been a sad history of missed opportunities. Gorbachev offered to Reagan at Reykjavik, let's get rid of nuclear weapons, and Reagan wouldn't give up Star Wars, so Gorbachev backed off. Then Putin offered to Clinton to cut our arsenals to 1,500 or even 1,000 if we would stop planting these missiles in Eastern Europe and expanding our missiles, and Clinton didn't give in on that. And right now we're totally provoking Russia, planting missiles in Eastern Europe and even in, Georgia and, former Soviet republics. I mean, how would we feel? Well, we know how we felt when Russia tried to put missiles into Cuba. It created this incredible world crisis, and yet we're provoking them, and we're also provoking China. We're opening new military bases in Australia. We're beefing up our missiles with Japan. And China and Russia have been proposing a treaty to ban these missiles and weapons in space at the Commission on Disarmament in Geneva, and every country in the world votes it except the United States of America, because like Obama and all of us are tied into this incredible military, industrial, congressional, academic complex that Eisenhower warned against. Our government is so corrupt, there's so much money being made in the arms trade that we can't shut the spigot, even though it would be good for us, and we have willing partners.
What sort of changes might you expect or fear in the political landscape for America and the world if Romney becomes the next president?
I think Romney would articulate terrible policies that I would disagree with enormously. I mean, he's not for nuclear disarmament. He's got people like John Bolton that to me is like, the death threat of foreign policy, advising him. But I think it'll get everybody stirred up, whereas with Obama we're giving him a free pass because we think he's the good guy. Look what's happening with Iran. It's like we're going to war with Iran and threatening war with Iran because they're doing what they were legally entitled to do under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is enrich uranium to make it for their nuclear power plants. And of course, the enrichment machines, you just put it through a couple of more times and then you've got a bomb. So you can't draw a line and stop it. We're literally handing the technology over to people and then saying, no, don't you do it. Or saying to other countries it's okay. I mean, we never objected when Brazil enriched uranium or Japan or, and these are non-nuclear weapon states, but they all have a bomb in the basement. I mean, I met with Mayor Akiba, who was the head of Mayors of Peace when he was a parliamentarian in Japan. And he said to me, this was like in '95, well, Japan has the bomb. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we have all the material, we have the technology. I said, well, how long would it take you? He said, like 3 weeks. And Japan actually passed a law this week enlarging their nuclear power law to say that nuclear power gives them national security. So because they're concerned that there's such an opposition to nuclear power in Japan, that they might lose their ability to manufacture plutonium for bombs, which they've got their bomb in the basement too in Japan.
The people of Japan have suffered uniquely from the nuclear age. Struggling back now from the disaster of nuclear power, they remain the only victims of the deliberate use of nuclear weapons. Those events forever burned into human memory, and may yet serve to hold the human race back forever from repetition. The images by the children preserves that memory, and each year we will remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki.